Okay, you're done. All of the hard work is done, and now it's mission accomplished. So what's next? Because with your degree from ITI, you'll have the tools you need to have a better life. And the reason we do this is you. We want to foster your dreams, your plans, and the hope for your future with a quality education. Our tagline is for a better life, so you can actually live the life you've always dreamed of. And it can all begin here at ITI, where we're invested in your future.
I'm Lee Feinswag, and this is Sports 225. And not just any Sports 225, this is the 25th year of the show. We started with Sports Monday, continued it into Sports 225, and now, a quarter century later, here we are. Sports 225 is sponsored by Breck. And now, me. And it's like, you're still going to be there. Oh, well, so it is, Sports 225. Look, I'm right there. So can you imagine you're a young guy, you get a job with a newspaper, in this case, the Baton Rouge Advocate, and your first year on the beat covering LSU football, you get to write about the greatest college football season in history, which I declare, and a national championship. And that's exactly what happened with Wilson Alexander. There were times you must have been going, this is ridiculous.
Somewhat. I got to cover a national championship run, though they didn't win it when I was at Georgia 2 years ago. So this was my second experience doing that in 3 years, but this time they actually won it. So that was a different kind of experience.
And of course there, though, you were a student working for the student paper and with a rooting interest, even though, you know, I'm sure you tried to be the neutral journalist, but it's kind of cool when your own school is doing that.
Yeah, it was cool. I mean, growing up in Georgia, you know, you're around that all the time. So it was very cool also to get to do that with all of my friends at the same time, going out to cover the Rose Bowl, and it's me. We're all looking at each other like, this is amazing.
Did you, as a senior in college, you got to cover the Rose Bowl?
Yeah,
That's
when they
good.
went out to beat Oklahoma in the Rose Bowl, I was there.
Yeah. Well, it had to be interesting when LSU played Georgia this year.
Yeah, I mean, going into that game, I knew LSU was going to beat them very easily. So what was nice about that was getting to be back in Atlanta with my family. That was really great.
That's good. So anyway, I wanted Wilson to come on because obviously, no matter what, win, lose, or draw, the LSU football team would be the story this week because of what happened Monday night. And this was beforehand. I honestly never really thought LSU would lose to Clemson, even in the first quarter when Clemson was fabulous in that first quarter. But the LSU team was just so dominant in so many ways. So I figured, you know, the insight that we would get. But so let's backtrack. So last week when we had talked, you were going to go to Jennings, and I assume you were going to Jennings to do a story on Etienne.
Yes.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So what was that like, going to Jennings and then doing and visiting with people there?
It was interesting because, you know, having covered LSU now for about 11 months, I've, you know, gotten a sense of Louisiana and how much Louisiana, especially the southern part of the state, loves LSU. Well, you go to Jennings, at least last week, there's this little pocket that's rooting for Clemson, that's wearing orange, that's rooting for LSU at the same time. It's not like they're only rooting for Clemson,
Right.
but they have a rooting interest in Clemson because Travis Etienne, who is the most famous person now to ever come from that city, at least as an athlete, is playing over on the opposing team. And so it was really interesting for them. For some of them, it was like, we can't lose this week because either Travis wins or LSU wins. And some of them are obviously big LSU fans, but they really love Travis there.
That must have been fun, though, to go there and talk to those people. Because for those of you, I mean, everybody should know where Jennings is, but it's in the western part of the state. And it's one of those places you tend to stop at and go to the Dairy Queen and get gas off of I-10, you know. But, you know, it is truly small-town America.
Yeah, and there's more there than just a Dairy Queen. I mean, the downtown area is quaint, and there were still some Christmas banners up from a few that hadn't quite taken down yet. A local pet shop had a giant LSU inflatable tiger strapped to its door, and they were just really excited for this game and excited for Travis.
That is good. And he seems like a really nice kid. Boy, what a good player, too.
He's a fantastic player, and the way they talked about him in high school as a player, my goodness. I don't know how people didn't quite notice him sooner because he was absolutely incredible, especially by his junior year.
You know, it's really interesting about this season, and Clemson, you had to pay, if you're a college football person, you paid attention to the last few years. And seemingly a really nice group of people and young men. They represented themselves really well. This LSU team seemed to be mostly the same thing too. It wasn't a year where there was off the field coverage. They broke camp in August and there were no arrest stories, there were no fights, and if there were, they covered it up really well. And through the season, the kids gave great interviews and seemed really nice. And the whole Joe Burrow story and all that he did, not the least of which the things that he said about his hometown of Athens, Ohio, and all the money that was able to be raised for the food bank there. I mean, it just seemed like one of those continually feel-good college football stories all season long on most fronts.
Yeah, I think it was. I mean, there were obviously some instances of players getting in trouble. I mean, there was the whole thing with Michael Divinity leaving the team, and Sadiq Charles was kind of in and out of the lineup, but there weren't a bunch of arrests or anything. And the only preseason fight that we heard of really only spoke to how competitive Joe Burrow is, because he got hit and then he just absolutely lit up the defense during a scrimmage. They really played for each other this year. They understood what they could accomplish. And they didn't let their own egos get in the way of that. And that's what made it such a remarkable season. It's what made them so successful in the long run, is that these guys, this group has a really high character. Jack Marucci spoke to me about that on the field after the game. He has found a way to measure character. And this group is one of the highest character groups that's ever come through LSU, at least during his time here. And that we saw that throughout the year.
And Jack's a high character guy too, if you've got to know him pretty well. Very interesting fella. Well, Wilson Alexander covers LSU baseball and LSU football for The Advocate. You can follow him on Twitter. I have this written down, but at WH_Alexander.
Yes.
How about that? I can't remember what I did, 2 weeks ago, but at least I got that. Anyway, we'll continue visiting with him. We'll talk more nuts and bolts LSU football when we get back to Sports 225.
Break out of the chaos.
All right, we're back on Sports 225, hanging out with Wilson Alexander. He covers LSU for The Advocate. And we tape this show on Wednesday mornings. The game Monday night ended very close to midnight, and then I'm sure you worked well into the night. And I don't know what you would have done Tuesday, but hopefully Tuesday night you got some sleep.
Oh, I slept a lot last night. Yeah,
imagine.
that was great. Got to catch up because we worked until 3 in the morning or so the night of the game, and then went out into New Orleans just to try to experience what that was like.
Or just
for
go
everyone.
walk around
just to
and see
be
what
in that atmosphere. People were so happy, and it's uplifting to be around people who are elated like that.
Yeah, and many thousands of people went to New Orleans knowing that they couldn't get tickets and that they just wanted to be there for the scene. The same thing happened the first time, really, was when the Saints made their Super Bowl run. All of a sudden, people they wanted to be in New Orleans for the event. And then this was a good example of that as well.
People who had been there in when the Saints won the Super Bowl said this wasn't quite as much of an explosion of people as the Saints, but there was still the same amount of passion, I think, from those who were there.
Yeah. Anything that you saw that is worth sharing? I mean, you can see some weird stuff in the French Quarter for one.
Yeah, there's some stuff that sort of scarring more. So, but there was I guess the funny thing was someone had a giant Joe Burrow cutout head, and they were just sort of like waving it from a balcony. That was notable.
That's so when the season started this year, okay, you're looking at it, and mostly as you, Brooks Cabina, and Scott Ravelli as a columnist. I mean, and whatever. Did you look at this team and go, okay, number one, they could be pretty good, but did you think to yourself, national championship good, Joe Burrow greatest LSU sports season in the history of the school besides Pete Maravich good? Did any of that cross your mind at the time?
No, I mean, I expected, because Alabama, they were coming off playing in the championship game. You knew that there was still this Alabama team lurking in the distance. And I think even when I would talk to former players, they would say that even for them, they needed to see this team beat Alabama to believe that it could go on to win a national championship. So for a while, even though you thought, okay, they could be pretty good, they could go 10-2, 11-1, they could compete to get into the playoff because we knew this team was going to be talented. You still knew that they had to beat Alabama first before any of that could happen. Once they did that, I was like, okay, this team's pretty good. And we'd seen Burrow at that point all year. But the Burrow part of it is probably the most striking part of the whole season, the part that I didn't expect going in. I mean, how can you expect someone to throw for 60 touchdowns? It never happened before.
No, I mean, that's what I've said. I've said all along that I thought that if LSU won the game against Clemson, it would have to be declared the greatest college football team of all time. The 95 Nebraska team, I think it was 2001 Miami team, pretty good. The 2000, maybe 3 or 4 USC team with Leinart, Bush, those guys are great. But considering what this team did, and then I said with Burrow, except for what Pete Maravich did, because that's just unparalleled. It's the single greatest LSU sports athletic season by any individual athlete, and that's really saying a lot at a school that's had the athletic success that they've had. And it's even more amazing when you think, like, from what you were saying. I mean, he was good at the end of last season. I mean, and there was every indication he'd be really good this year, but just really good.
Yeah, there wasn't this expectation he was going to go off and win the Heisman. I mean, he didn't even have Heisman odds to speak of or not much of, to speak of at the beginning of the season. And then, but the combination of this new offense with Joe Brady and the way that Burrow improved over the last year, the amount of work that they put in, him and all the receivers coming over on Saturday mornings, working for 2 hours on their timing, just a couple routes every day, perfecting them. That's what led to what we saw.
The nonverbal communication between him and his receivers was stunning. I mean, the ability when the offensive line did such a great job of giving him all the time he needed to pass and roam around, sometimes, 8, 9, 10 seconds. And in the meantime, the receivers would break routes and do things. And, excuse me, he knew where they were going and they knew where he needed to throw the ball.
I mean, it's kind of a cliche to talk about chemistry, but that's what they had. It's funny, the receivers have talked sometimes about the death stare that Burrow gives them. They know what he wants.
Yeah.
He can just give them a look and they understand, okay, I need to stop joking around, like I need to do this way. And they worked for months and months and months on developing, knowing where each other was going to be, knowing where they needed to go.
Of those receivers, did you write about any of them this year, and were you particularly impressed with anybody as an interview subject?
Oh, gosh. I loved talking to Justin Jefferson. He was always very fun. I wrote about the 3 of them, Terrace, Justin, and Jamar, as a group after the Texas game. They're friends.
That seems like a million years ago, too, that Texas game.
It really does.
Remember how hot it was that weekend?
Yeah, I thought about that actually driving over here, how I was like sweating through all of my clothing, and it was just so hot. But gosh, yeah, it does feel like a long time ago now.
It does. And I remember LSU going into that game thinking, all right, what are you going to get here? I fully expected that to be a down-to-the-wire, really tough sporting event, which it wasn't.
I mean, it was in some ways, of course. They had to throw that 3rd and 17 pass just to ice it. Texas, obviously, once we saw toward the end of the year, just wasn't as good as everyone thought they were going to be coming into the year. They also had a lot of injuries that they had to deal with. But for LSU to go on the road and win that kind of a game gave them a lot of confidence.
Yeah. But anyway, back to the receivers. So, yeah, the fact that they're friends and they have the good nonverbal communication with their quarterback. But you obviously you like covering them. And then Moss, who looks like he's 35 years old to begin with, what a fabulous player he is.
Yeah, I mean, he comes to LSU just looking for a chance, looking for someone somewhere to be, somewhere to find a home and to be successful. And he has all these injuries. He has to wait for like 2 years between college snaps. And he was perfect in that offense. And he and Joe are really close too, so that helped. And then, I mean, he's had the most productive season by a tight end in school history now.
Yeah.
So it'll be interesting to see what he does next, whether or not he goes to the draft or not.
Yeah, well, that's the next part. Is that sometimes the best recruiting you have to do is already on campus. Wilson Alexander is here with me. He covers LSU for The Advocate. You can read him at theadvocate.com. You can even spring for the printed newspaper now and then. Probably costs like what? How much it costs now a daily newspaper if you buy it?
I don't even know.
You don't know? Yeah, you know. You follow him on Twitter at WHAlexander__. You know, just,
I couldn't get Wilson Alexander as a
or
Twitter
any-
handle.
any
That'd been
kind of-
taken already.
Oh
so.
yeah, or come up with some combination there. You have a nickname?
No.
Good. And if you did, you weren't going to tell me anyway.
Yeah.
We'll be right back. I'm Lee Feinswag at Sports 225.
Break out of the routine.
They come in, there's some music playing in the background. You know, you just don't hear it yet. There you go. We're back on Sports 225, hanging out with Wilson Alexander. He covers LSU for The Advocate and had himself quite a football season. But in this "What have you done for me lately" world, not you necessarily, but the LSU football team. So when LSU won the championship the first time under Nick Saban in the early 2000s, he had said that he celebrated for a little while, and then the thing that made him the most nervous was right away was he saw agents in the hotel lobby. You know, they got back to the hotel and there were already people preying on his players who could turn pro or whatever. And of course that begs the next question. You know, we know of course anybody who's a senior, Joe Burrow goes, and the only question for him is he the first pick in the draft, second pick in the draft, whatever. I have a feeling Joe will probably be okay. He can probably do a few endorsements and stuff. Maybe with a cigar company now, who knows? But there are probably a lot of players who have to decide, do I come back for what would be my redshirt junior year, my senior year, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, there's quite a lot. This was a junior-heavy team from that 2017 recruiting class. There's some guys who clearly are going to leave. I mean, Justin Jefferson, Grant Delpit come to mind. Kayvon Chason, he would be a good draft prospect as well. But there's a lot of players on this team, guys like Jacob Phillips, Patrick Queen, Tyler Shelvin, who could get drafted, but they wouldn't be maybe in the first 3 rounds unless they had really great combines. But they might decide to try to kind of cash in now, and go on and get to the draft. So Orgeron's going to have to do quite a bit of recruiting.
Yeah, recruiting in-house, as we say. Have you ever been to one of the combines?
No, I haven't.
Draft day?
No.
So it's one of the more interesting occurrences. So it'll be in the LSU practice facility, and representatives from all the NFL teams will be there, and media comes around. I mean, some years ESPN's done live cut-ins and stuff there and whatever. So you see these kids, and a lot of times they just strip down to like a pair of tight shorts and sneakers. That's it. And they're just, physical body gods, and you see them, normally when you see them, with shoulder pads and helmets and all that, they're big, strong people. But when you see them like this, and then they run and jump, and you're like, it's just ridiculous. Yeah. And the minutia under which, they get justified and judged is just crazy.
Yeah, I mean, they put under a microscope.
Yeah.
It's the position that not a lot of people would want to be in, but some of them thrive.
Yeah, but when you watch the NFL, and I don't know if you follow the NFL. Are you a Falcons fan growing up in Atlanta?
Not so much.
Yeah.
They're not very good.
No. Well, they've been good. They've been good in your lifetime.
They blew the Super Bowl lead. They did that.
Yeah. But the point is that there's so many guys in the NFL who didn't do well at combines, that don't fit the mold. Like the difference between, like 5'11" and 6'2", when they talk about a quarterback, is like this. That's it. But yet that can be such a defining factor.
Yeah, it could. I mean, and it'll be interesting to see how some of these LSU players get judged on those kinds of things, where maybe they aren't the traditional size. I mean, Justin Jefferson is slim, but I guess for a wide receiver in this NFL, he that can be okay.
Yeah.
So that'll be something we see, coming up. They also sometimes fib those numbers a little bit.
Oh, there's no fibbing once you get to the NFL. I mean, the numbers that come out, it's just like in the NBA. I thought he was 6'11". He's only 6'8" and a half. There's a lot of that. And in the NFL, I mean, it's like bare feet, naked weight. The whole thing. So my friend was even on once many years ago, but I grew up with a guy who's a scout for the New York Football Giants, and I've been with him when they've been evaluating players. And when all the scouts are together and they're looking at the videos and stuff, and they all suck. No, they don't have a kind word to say about anybody. Oh, you can't do this, you can't do that. And you wonder how the hell do they ever pick players? Because, and of course, part of it's just that they're all bluffing each other in this room when they all don't know damn well they're going to, try to get little Johnny Smith be the first guy to come in their, the team.
It's
pretty
a bit
funny,
of a game. It's a bit of a chess match in that regard, I guess.
Yeah, it'd be a good story, though, you'd enjoy if you have any friends who are NFL scouts to get with. And even if it's anonymous, to tell you what they think about players. Because what they do is they look at them and see what they don't think they can do, not what they know they can run and jump and catch balls or throw balls or, whatever, but they talk about what they can't do. It's pretty interesting.
I'll take your word for it. I have no experience in that.
No,
in that realm.
I'm telling you, do it.
Okay, all right.
Anybody else who we're not thinking of who we might go, wait, they're going to leave and go pro?
Yeah, I mean, there's people all, a large chunk of the offensive line has a decision to make. Sadiq Charles is a junior. Lloyd Cushenberry is eligible. Austin Deculus is eligible as well. Damian Lewis is a senior. He doesn't have much of a choice.
Right.
But, I mean, Adrian McGee, left guard, who ended up being a really critical player this year, he's a senior. They're going to have to end up replacing a good portion of that offensive line, which kind of goes back to Orshon recruiting. He needs to get some of these guys who have a decision to make back on the team. And we haven't even mentioned like Clyde Edwards-Helaire, running back, who was so good this year. Could he come back and really be the central piece of this offense and raise his stock even higher? Or, does he weigh the risk of getting injured? Could his stock, is this the right time for him? There's decisions all over the place. Kerry Vincent, Jacoby Stevens, most of this team has some kind of a decision to make.
Can you see that tiny running back returning to LSU under any circumstances?
I would be surprised.
He'd be nuts.
Yeah, I would just be surprised because I don't know how you can raise your stock any higher than he has. He's put everything on tape. He had an absolutely phenomenal season.
And we talked about how you were surprised about Burrow. Weren't you surprised by midseason going, wow, this kid's way better than I thought and having a better year?
A little bit, because I had seen him play a couple times last year, and he was splitting time, obviously, with Nick Brissett. But the way that he was able to just spin out of tackles, and he was so elusive, such a great runner. I mean, I looked like kind of watching a pinball, just bounce all over the field. I thought that he would actually hold on to his job longer than people expected. It seemed like in camp, it was John Emery or Ty Davis Price, and Clyde was going to get pushed to the side. I thought that he was going to be fine as the starting running back, but to expect him to put up those numbers, again, like this entire offense, I don't think you could have expected it or anticipated it.
He was fun to watch. All right, we got time barely for a last segment on Sports 225. He's Wilson Alexander. He covers LSU for The Advocate. I'm Lee Feinswag. This is Sports 225.
Break out of the chaos.
Coming down the home stretch of another Sports 225, go to sports225.com to watch not only old shows, which we archive on our Sports 225 TV YouTube channel, and I'm so far behind on those. Not as far, I don't know, a couple of months, but you can still see old shows. And this one with Wilson Alexander, one day will be up there. And also for the show listings of when we're on Cox 4 and CST. So we talked quite a bit about the LSU football team. Now you have to change gears and cover LSU baseball. And that's a grind of a beat because there are so many games.
Yeah, 9 days from now they open preseason practice.
Jeez. Do you have to go to do baseball today, as a matter of fact? I would think.
Not today.
Oh, you can take today off? Good.
Maybe.
Good.
We'll see.
Good. Storyline on them in a minute or less?
The pitching staff, whether or not it can stay healthy, is going to determine the season. They have 5 starters who are all capable of pitching on the weekend. If they stay healthy and hit their potential, they could be pretty good.
I asked Paul Maneri the last couple of years, who did you piss off the last couple of years to have so many injuries? My gosh, it's just been so unfair how many people have gotten hurt on that baseball team.
And it's just absolutely derailed them. But they have taken some measures to try to address those injuries, to try to prevent them and get ahead of them. And we'll see if those things can pay off this season.
Well, it's been quite an 11 months for young Wilson Alexander, you know? An LSU baseball season that was really fun last year, and then this LSU football season, all that you got to see and do, you know?
I'm grateful.
Yeah.
Really am. I'm excited for what's next too.
Is there an Advocate book coming out? I assume
There
there
is.
is on football.
Yeah, I'm very excited. It's going to be
Yeah.
160 pages, hardback, all of our pictures and stories from the season. You can go ahead and pre-order copies now.
I'm sure, at theadvocate.com. There you go. Follow him on Twitter at WHAlexander_. If you, I haven't even tweeted in so long, but it's at Lee Feinswag. I have nothing to say. I just, whatever. The only thing I'll say is thank you for watching Sports 225. Thank you for coming on. It was most enjoyable. We'll do it again maybe in a couple of months during baseball season. That's all right.
It'd be great. Thanks
All
for
right,
having me on,
good.
Lee.
Good night. Good morning, depending on what time of day you're watching. Get out of here. Go.
At carnival time by Baton Rouge Bay, that's the site of my story. At Spanish Town Mardi Gras, things can get blurry.